Okay, welcome everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Shavua Tov. Shana Tova. Sheyeh Shana Tova. We have a few more days left in Tishrei. We're learning in the month of Tishrei, sponsored by the Silver family in memory of Batya Fega Bas Yisrael, by the Polstein family, Lindish Mas Freda Sima Bas Yitzchak, by the Avram family for Refuah Shlema for Moshe Asher ben Malka, Leah Rachel Bas Chaya, Uleilinish Mas Miriam Reisel Bas Moshe Yehudis, by Regina Warshawski in honor of her family and in memory of the departed family, by the American family for the Refuah Shlema of the son Hillel Tzvi Yehuda and the protection of all of our Chayalim. The week is sponsored by Gonchers, the senior Gonchers, your in-laws, yeah, Alan and Rini, right? It's nice to find, yeah, in honor of you, yeah. and your husband, and your children, and yeah, they're sponsored the week, and Elchanan Fast, sponsored by Elchanan Fast, for all the hostages to safely come home soon. The pages went out. There's some extra ones there for whoever needs at the end of the table. What we're continuing to do today, and we began at the beginning of this past learning year, was the whole concept of understanding what it means to live in the times of Yemot Hamashiach, of the days of Mashiach. And we're going to do a very important learning today to keep us focused, to keep us sane, to keep us clear, in order to understand how to live mamash, what we're seeing unfolding in front of our eyes. However, there is also there's a danger when we live in the times that we live in today, when it comes to learning and trying to understand, are these the days of Mashiach? Are these not the days of Mashiach? When is it going to happen? And I want to address something that maybe be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's just a personal feeling. Whenever I've heard anyone, from the most well-intended people, try to give some kind of an estimate or say, oh, it's because this happened, you're going to see Mashiach is about to come right now. It's never been good for it. It's not because it hasn't worked, not because Mashiach didn't come yet. It's just that way of banking on that it's not really the way. That's not really the Jewish way. It's not really the way that, in our Masoret, in our tradition, we've approached the concept of the coming of Mashiach. Whenever anyone says, you'll see when the clock strikes whatever, or when that takes place there, when this country fights this country, then that's a sign that Mashiach's coming. I'll tell you an amazing sign that Mashiach is coming that's even higher than all those. Remember yesterday we read Bereshit bara Elokim tashmayim v'taretz? That's also a sign that Mashiach is coming. Zet omeret, especially since the Midrash tells us over there, where the pasuk says, "V'ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim," spirit of the spirit hovering above the waters. The Midrash says, what spirit is this? Ze ruach shel melech HaMashiach. It's the spirit of Mashiach in the world. Therefore, in order to approach this as healthy as possible, we have to understand, we have to make this distinction between preparing for the Mashiach coming, davening for the Mashiach to coming, and getting out of estimates and what's the other word for it? Like sorry? Predictions. Yeah. This stuff is not. It's not. Anyone that grew up in the world of Lubavitch in the 80s and 90s. I mean, I don't know how they're still functioning in terms of this heightened anticipation and predictions, not because of the Rebbe, chas v'shalom, God forbid, just because of not learning. This is what we're trying to do in here, learning the Sugiyot inside, so that we can really, again, approach this, like really just be healthy Jews, living not just with Mashiach consciousness, but to understand how this whole thing, like what is this whole thing about? I feel like the learning that we did until now really helped us understand a lot of different concepts regarding understanding the times of Mashiach, davening for noticing how much we're davening for Mashiach to come, and how this is not a new thing. It's just right now, I would say, pretty heightened in the air. Now, obviously, because we're living in such a tumultuous time, in such a strange time, it's not dafkan because of now that Mashiach is going to come more. Mashiach could come whenever the second Hashem says, "Yigi azman geulatchem." It's time. But there's nothing like learning. There's nothing like learning Mekorot inside, as opposed to just going with guts and feelings. And that was one of the things that we started here on October 8th last year. In October 9th, because the first day there was no, I don't even know if there was davening or learning going on. Everything was just up in the air. But on October 9th, when we came back and started learning for the first day, it was a men's year, and there was so many emotions, and there still are. We said, listen, we must align our emotions with Das Torah, with the Torah, with how the Torah explains to us what does it mean to go out to war. What does revenge mean? What are these concepts? What do these terms mean? Same thing with the Geula, same thing with the coming of Melech HaMashiach. So, whoever needs, there's one more there, right? Two more. Whoever needs and they can follow, it's kedai to follow this, because we're going to be learning very important Gemara inside. Like this Gemara is going to basically, it could save our sanity, literally, to try to understand what it is we're going through. So you see in the bottom of page 58, the topic is a Mashiach ba behesach hadas. Have you ever heard of this concept before, that Mashiach's going to come with hesach hadas? Hesach hadas means distracted, in a distraction. Mashiach's going to come in a distraction. Have you ever heard of this term before? Mashiach's going to come with hesach hadas? This is a very common theme throughout a lot of the writings that describe what the days of Mashiach are going to be like, and it's going to be like a distraction. You're like, whoa, I didn't see that one coming. But how does that work with the notion of I'm supposed to believe and anticipate the arrival of Melech HaMashiach any given second? Am I supposed to actually actively not think about it? Am I supposed to be distracted so that I could just go about my life? How does this work? So we're going to learn the Gemara. It's just one line in the Gemara. We're going to learn it inside to help us be'emet get a really good grip on the time that we're living in. And alavai be'ezer Hashem, there should be a strengthening of all the places inside of us that need to be strengthened, because I'm sure that no one ever wanted Mashiach to come more than the times that we're living in right now. I think that's a pretty meaning in our times. I'm not talking about the Jew that was in 1939. I'm sure they wanted Mashiach just as much as we do, but in our era, in the world that we're living in, no one ever really understood, like, there's nowhere to go from here. Like, there's nowhere to go. There's no backwards. There's no sideways. There's nowhere to go besides towards the light of the Geula. That's where we're at. Okay, so Mashiach ba behesach hadat. Rav Brod from the Sefer Yemot Hamashiach we've been learning from says like this: לפעמים נשמעת שאלה, איך מתיישבת הציפייה המתמדת לגאולה עם המאמר אין בן דוד בא אלא בהסח הדס? How do we solve this problem that we have between constant anticipation for redemption with the statement that says the Mashiach only comes in a distraction? En Mashiach ba ela behesach hadat. It seems from the statement, En ben David ba ela behesach hadat, מהמאמר נראה לכאורה שיש להסיח דעת מעניין הגאולה, ורק אז היא תוכל לבוא. It seems based on what the statement says, that Mashiach only comes when you're distracted, is that we should really try right now to binge watch everything we always wanted to. Anything. Like anything we ever, as long as it's known. Not things that are, tameh, chas v'shalom, but we're supposed to binge watch, we're supposed to really be distracted if there's a statement that says Mashiach only comes behesach hadat. It's very interesting. How do we make shalom between these two concepts? And he lets us know right off the bat that there's a misunderstanding over here. It's a very important misunderstanding to point out. השאלה הזאת נובעת למעשה מאי הבנה של המקורות ושל כללי היסוד בלימוד התורה. There's a misunderstanding regarding how you learn Torah. That's basically what he's saying. There's a misunderstanding regarding how you understand the principles of Torah. נניח לרגע, let's assume for a second, next page, Shachen yesh ma'amar Chazal. Let's say there was a statement of Chazal, of our sages, that demand of us, shebo anu nidrashim lehesech hadat b'inyan ha'geula, where we're demanded to have a distraction regarding the geula. Well, מול המאמר הזה עומדים פסוקים רבים ושפע מאמרי חז"ל והלכות המדברים על חיוניותה של הציפייה למשיח. You got a problem here. If this was actually a statement of Chazal, what do you do with Shmona Esrei? Remember how many times we mentioned already that Mashiach and Geula shows up as an integral part of our davening. Remember, out of the 18 brachas, how many of them had to do with Geula? Sorry? 6. A third of Shmona Esrei are actually brachas about Geula. If that's the case, what am I supposed to do with the statement of Chazal that says, listen, it's all about being distracted? Am I supposed to just run through the siddur? Like, that's one thing. That's one issue that we have over here. And it's not just that. En sfor tefilot, third line, b'yimei chol, Shabbos v'chag. There's so many different davenings, whether it's weekdays, whether it's Shabbos. Listen, we're coming out of the swimming pool of the Machzor, of the Tefillot, of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. Do you know how often the Geula is mentioned in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot? What's one that comes to mind right away? Rosh Hashanah? Where? Yeah, what's one of the... Nachon. What else is there? Like mamash, like straight out Mashiach. Something that's very big here. I'm talking about V'yitnu lecha keter melucha is like a pretty obvious one, and they'll crown you with the crown, or meloch al kol haolam kulo b'chavodecha. That's a pretty big one. V'yeda kol pa'ul ki ata pa'ul, that everyone will know that God is God. That's Mashiach. What are we supposed to do with it if we're supposed to be distracted? שורה ארוכה של גדולי ישראל בכל הדורות, המשמשים דוגמה חיה לציפייה פעילה לביאת המשיח. We have so many tzaddikim, great tzaddikim, that throughout the generations, when we learn about what their daily lives were like, it was total, full-on anticipation. I was just learning the other day about the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim every night would close his door. He'd lock his door to a certain room in his house, and someone once overheard him screaming, he's like, what more do you need, Hashem? The Chafetz Chaim is saying this. And he turns to all the tzaddikim shochnei afar, those that aren't in the world anymore, and he would scream and he would say, Ribono shel olam, he'd say, Master of the world, in the presence of these tzaddikim, how come they're not shaking up the heavens anymore? Today's the Yortzeit to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditcher v'Eschlusi Yagen Aleinu. It's a good thing to always say his name, especially on his Yortzeit. Remember what we said on Rosh Hashanah 5 years ago, and also this past Yantiv, we said it also past Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditcher on Rosh Hashanah gets up and says, Master of the world, you gave us a mitzvah, it's called to blow the shofar. And in the blowing of the shofar, you said you should blow the shofar in Rosh Hashanah. But because we weren't sure exactly what you meant, Chazal came up with so many different variations and sounds in order to make sure that we're Yotzei Yedei Chova. Hundreds and thousands and millions of blowings of the shofar have taken place since God said, blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. And then Rabbi Levi Yitzchak said, and us? We've been trying all these different things to make sure we get it right. We ask of you just one blowing of the shofar. V'aya bayom hahu, Mashiach, on that great day, yitaka b'shofar gadol. There'll be a great blowing of the shofar, and then the famous nigun, uvau ha'ovdim me'eretz Ashur v'anidachim, right? Uvau ha'ovdim, ovdim means all those that are lost. V'anidachim, all those that feel nidach, rejected. And they'll all come, all the ones that feel rejected and all those that I lost, they're all going to come and bow down, where? Behar HaKodesh b'Yerushalayim. That's not Hesach Hadas. That doesn't seem that means that you should be distracted. Third line from the bottom of this paragraph. Ha'im kol ele na'asim tmuhim u'mokshim biglal ma'amar chazal echad. What are we supposed to do with all this? O she'ahefech hu anachon, or the opposite is actually more accurate. She'aleinu limtzo bi'ur le'ma'amar zeh. Let's understand what this statement of Chazal regarding distraction is really all about. הסותר אולי את הפסוקים מאמרי חז"ל, הלכות, תפילות, מעשיו של גדולי ישראל. Basically he's saying over here, maybe we have to re-examine the statement of Chazal. The statement of Chazal that says Mashiach only comes with a distraction, if you're distracted, perhaps we have to just realize we probably didn't understand it correctly. So let's understand it correctly. Let's understand, because it's true. It is a statement of Chazal, but let's understand it more correctly, and that this understanding will open up a whole new world of being in touch with the pulse of Geula, of redemption. כשמעיינים במקור הדברים מגלים קודם כל שאין בנמצא מאמר בנוסח הנ"ל. So the first thing you have to do is you have to realize there is no מאמר Chazal that says אין משיח בא, אין בן דוד בא אלא בהיסח הדס. There's no such thing that this actually doesn't exist. So that's a good beginning. Meaning, there are a lot of things, I don't know if, I can't think of anything else right now, but there are a lot of statements that have become accepted statements, but it's just because it sounds clicky, it sounds right, we say them and say them and say them, but we're not so sure about them. I mean, what's another good example of this? Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Can anyone think of another statement that's become accepted amongst Klal Yisrael, but it's actually not found anywhere? No. Nothing? Sorry?
You can't be buried in the Jewish cemetery.
Oh, that's a good one. Chabad.org is all over that one. They have a lot of articles about that one. That's not as simple as we think it is, Nachon. Did you ever hear the statement, Ein simcha ka'atarat asfekot, that there's no greater simcha than the removal of doubts? Anyone ever hear that? That's also not exactly... there's reasons why these statements took off, and they stayed with us, they lasted with us for a very long time. But this one is very important to understand the Lashon. The Chazal doesn't say Mashiach only comes when you're distracted. That's not what it says. Let's learn what it actually says. There is a ma'amar in the Gemara in Sanhedrin. There definitely is a ma'amar that says, En ben David ba ad she'yityarshu min ha'geula. Mashiach will only come when we have despaired over him coming. That's true. There's a statement like that, and we've learned it before. We've actually learned it in the context of, does anyone remember? Who was the first one that despaired over, it's like a Geula moment in their life? And then that Geula moment happens. Sarah Imenu. What does she call her son? What does Yitzchak mean? Laughter. What is she laughing about? What is she laughing about? It could never happen to me. I'm 90. I can't give birth. Boom, Yitzchak. Right? It's all Torah from Rav Tzadok Cohen that we learned many, many times, understanding that that the beginning of the building of the Jewish people, he was the first person born as a Jew. It had to come dafka from a situation where you have already given up on thinking that it could actually be, so that really, in our lives, there's never an excuse to say, listen, it really won't be. Because the first Jewish boy was born after the holiest woman in the world had not just doubt, she had despair. Right? Sarah Imenu had despair. That can't happen to me. People are sitting here today, they're saying, Mashiach? Come on. If after the 6 million, Mashiach didn't come yet, you're going to tell me it's going to happen now? So that's the statement of Chazal, En ben David ba ad she'yityarshu min ha'geula. That's true. Now there's another statement from Chazal, which is the one that's going to help us solve our problem. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol na'eh b'dvarim. Gimel ba'in behesech hadat. 3 things happen when you're distracted. And these are the 3 things. Mashiach, Metziah, ve'akrav. Interesting. So Mashiach, hopefully we understand what that word means. Metziah, what does that mean? Metziah?
You lost something.
Found it, right. Founding, right? And akrav. What's akrav? Scorpion. Comes behesach hadas. What does that mean? That a scorpion comes when you're distracted? If you weren't distracted, you wouldn't allow a scorpion to come to you. You understand? A scorpion comes and attacks you, in a place of being distracted. If you weren't distracted, it wouldn't come to you. Nachon? Was anyone here ever bitten by a scorpion before? She was? A scorpion, yeah. Yeah, she wasn't like sitting there, oh, hey, come scorpion, come. That's not, right, it's a hesa, she was distracted, right? Zo kviat uvda, this is stating a fact. She'geula tavo pitom. Mashiach's going to come, it's going to be suddenly. Bli shenuchal ladat mirosh matai b'diuk hi tavo, without being able to know this is exactly, and this is exactly how and when it's going to happen. This is what the Gemara means. It doesn't mean that you have to actively be distracted. It means that the end game will be that when it happens, you'll know it happens, but it's not because you sat there and you're like, 3, 2, 1. No, that's what the Gemara is trying to tell us. It's not going to happen like that. That stinks, by the way, because we would love to have a nice countdown. We would love to be able to not live like that, because so many other things happen like that as well. This is one thing we would love to say, no. We made Aliyah, it's going to come now, right? Or we did this, it should happen now. That's not how Mashiach works. That's not how Mashiach works. And that's hard to accept. But that's how the Gemara is telling us, that's a kviat uvda, that's stating a fact. He'll explain. Yesh ha-shoalim ha-mesupar ba'oto sugya, later in the Gemara, כאשר רבי זרע מצא את החכמים עוסקים בגאולה, רב Zera, the Tana Kodesh, finds a bunch of righteous tzaddikim talking about Geula. Amar lehem b'matuta be'ina minaychu, lo tirchakua. Bevakasha mikem, al tarchikua. Please don't distance the arrival of Mashiach. What does he mean by that? He comes and he sees people sitting around and they're talking about the Geula, but how are they talking about the Geula? And he says to them, please stop this, because you're distancing the coming of Mashiach. Because we say, listen, Rav Zera learned the Gemara. The Gemara says Mashiach only comes when you're distracted. If you're thinking about it too much, you're pushing away its imminent arrival. But when you learn Rashi on that Gemara, מגלים מיד שאין הכוונה לחכמים שדיברו על הציפייה לגאולה, אלא לעיסוק בחישובי הקץ. What were they doing? Were they talking about Geula and the anticipation of Geula? No. What were they busy doing? According to my calculation, it should be like this, but according to your calculation, it should come over here. Then Reb Zera says, Chevra, stop that. That's not the conversation. That's not what it's about. That's not what it's going about. Now, I'm saying things that are very heavy because I'm sure you had this too. Haven't you heard a lot of calculations over the years, especially over the last few years, when people want to they mean well, they want to make you feel good, that even though it seems so scary, no. When Russia invades Ukraine, or when Yemen starts to do what they do, or when the West and the East, all these signs, this is not how we act. Lubavitch Rebbe was not involved in, he wasn't busy with any of those calculations. Lubavitch Rebbe was involved in one thing. This hand motion, saying, Yalla, Udu, mitzvahs, love, ad blidai, achdus. And that's not calculations. That's just action. That's being involved. That's being on the court. That's the anticipation for the Geula. And that's what Rabbi Zera was telling the Chachamim. I know you're doing holy things. You're probably thinking that you're going to benefit Am Yisrael big time because you're going to give us a timeline. That doesn't work when it comes to the coming of Mashiach. Because if I had to ask any of you, when would have been the most perfect and opportune time for Mashiach to arrive? Does anyone have any answers? I have a very clear one. Does anyone have a very clear answer? What makes most sense to you that Mashiach should have been here? How about the moment till your child started shaking from the first azakah? Doesn't that seem like a perfect time for Mashiach to come? Doesn't that make sense? A cry of a mother overseeing their child, 3, 4, 18, shaking from a siren? Or go before that. What do you think? Maybe after in 1945, wouldn't that have made most logical sense in the world? And yet, that's not what has happened yet. Again, on our timeline. In Hashem's timeline, ki elef shanim be'enecha kiyom etmol. In Hashem's timeline, 1945 happened this morning, or is still happening right now. In our head, it happened 80 years ago. That's important to remember. But the timeline and the calculations and the predictions is what we're being told here. You got to stay away from these things. Until now, they've never done anything good. They've only, according to Rabbi Zera, distanced the coming of Mashiach, because Mashiach's arrival is going to be, boom, like that, without even having an ounce of like, oh my God, check it out, boom. It's not like that. Al kach omer Rabbi Zera says about this, Chishuvei hakitzim, calculating the ends of time, marchikim et HaMashiach, they distance the coming of Mashiach, ki hu yavo behafta'a, hesach hadas. He gives a new interpretation. He says distraction doesn't mean distraction, it means surprise, behafta'a. Bli sheneda merosh et yom bo'o, without knowing ahead of time that he will be coming. You have a question?
I don't know if it's a question or not, but I know, like, we're discussing anticipation, and that I know, like, being about Tshuva, I'm now learning to anticipate and to, demand or expect Mashiach. But I also have this fear, because it's unknown, and I don't know what the expectations are, right? Of like, I don't do this all the way, I don't do that all the way. Am I going to have to do all that? Like, there's all this unknown. So obviously my fear, I feel also is pushing it away.
Right. Well, that's the reason why we're learning this Sefer. Addressing exactly what you're bringing up, understanding what am I anticipating.
Right.
Because
you're
right.
Ask for something you don't even
you're
know.
Addressing this is the whole point of this year. It's not to figure out when Mashiach's coming. It's to understand how to anticipate it.
Or why to anticipate it.
And why? And why is a pretty simple thing. The world isn't too... the world's not doing too good right now. Meaning, it's not like you look at a certain region, you're like, "Ooh, it's so peaceful and calm there," or things seem to be looking like they're really good right now.
So we're supposed to let go a little bit, is what you're saying, in the distraction. Like, kind of let go to it, because
the balance is what we're going to be learning. It's what we started learning in this year, and what we're going to continue to be learning in this year. But it's a very good point what you're saying. How can I anticipate something that A, I'm not sure do I really want, or B, I don't know what it's actually going to be looking like. So this is what we're trying to learn in this shiur. So it's very good what you brought up. Yeah.
Does calculating include, like, you hear all the time, Pesach time, right? Like, oh, now it's right for Mashiach to come, Pesach, Shemana, Geula, Mashiach's almost here. Like, is that included in calculations?
Well, yes, but again, I don't. This could you could walk out of this year like super depressed, saying, "Listen, never think it's a time for Mashiach to come. It's always a time for Mashiach to come."
Right, but then if you don't, I find like when people say like, "Oh, Mashiach's come, should come this Pesach," and then Mashiach doesn't, then it's like then you get depressed after, and it's hard to go back to expecting. So maybe.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It has to always be, the anticipation has to be something that's not dependent on a date. It's always shlavim of going more and more and more and more connected to it. But wrapping yourself around a certain timeline is what the issue is. We had a Zoom on the Corona Pesach, right? That was a big one. Corona Pesach, we did our mincha, our Zoom mincha. Looking back at it now, it's but we did a Zoom mincha, and then we sat down in our rooms or office, I don't know whatever was going on, and we started sharing with each other because the hype for like it's is probably going to be was so insane. It was so intense. And everyone, I remember clearly, a few chaver, what they said, they're like, listen, I'm going to open the door for Eliyahu Hanavi, but I'm just preparing all the chaver here that if, Eliyahu Hanavi isn't coming it doesn't physically walk through the door, you may not see me at Minyan on Zoom next week, or whatever it is. Meaning there was such a, and that's why these things are dangerous. Yes. That's why the tzipiyah has to be a very healthy one. It has to be a very, very healthy one, mamash, with mental health and but you have to have dat. You have to understand Chazal. Like if we just really understand this Gemara right now, it could change our whole concept. It doesn't mean that a person shouldn't anticipate the coming of Mashiach because it's going to come in a distraction. It means you do your thing, let Hashem do His thing. What's your thing? What?
Bring Mashiach.
Your thing is Torah. Your thing is living a life of Mashiach consciousness. Your thing is mamash believing that yes, we're closer than ever, but God's timeline is not our timeline. I'm reminded again of something that's like, I've shared it so many times here, but I think it really is shayach because it was a big learning point for me, even though this was a shir that was given to 5-year-old kids. And it's very sad to share it this morning because, our dear friend and neighbor, Boaz Rajitsky, passed away this morning, right? Boaz's sister-in-law is Racheli Frankel, right? So before they found the boys, when it was, I don't know how much time was in between from the kidnapping and when they found them.
18 days.
18 days. One of the days she went to the kotel. Do you remember this? When she went to the kotel with the 2 other mothers? And there were a bunch of school kids there that were there with her, and they wanted to, they were saying, you wanted to give her koach, chizuk, and everything. And then she said such a profound statement. She's a Rebbe. She said to them, מתוקים, אנחנו מאמינים שהכל הטובה, הכל יהיה טוב, אבל תזכרו דבר אחד, הקדוש ברוך הוא לא עובד בשבילנו. God doesn't work for us, or by us. I forget what the exact language was. I think she either said, הקדוש ברוך הוא לא עובד אצלנו, or בשבילנו. אצלנו? How do you explain the difference between, it's a very, very important difference. God doesn't work by us means you have to understand, emuna means that, and I heard this from Lazer Brody, not that everything's gonna be good, but emuna means that everything that's unfolding is for the good. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference. It's a huge difference. So the same thing over here with this whole notion of Mashiach. It's a very important thing. Like God does not work by us. He doesn't work for us. He's not a teller that if we bring enough money to the bank, then that's not how it works. We do our thing. We show up on a Sunday morning and start the week to learn, to open our hearts, to understand Chazal better. And it's Hashem's cheshbon when Mashiach is coming. That's not ours. It's not ours. But the calculations can mess us up. I know a lot of people that have been very let down, and it's really messed up their Yiddishkeit because of these chishuvei kitzin, of these calculating, these calculations. It's not such a good thing.
So you could say it's coming soon, or closer than ever.
So again,
that's
soon.
Like a very scary statement that sounds like you're also like someone's calculating,
No, but emuna means that again, when I say soon, we have to understand what that means. Soon in whose time? In God's time, right? In God's time, but I do hear you. I hear what you're saying. Even saying soon. I was listening to a shir of one of my rebbeim from 40 years ago, and he said, we all know we're mamish and Mashiach's heels. It's mamish. We're here. We're right before Mashiach is coming, and you kind of want to jump back in time and go back to that shir and say, hey, I'm jumped from the future from 40 years. I want to let you know that statement isn't right. There's a part of you wants to say that. Right? So there's tension in it, but the more we understand what we're longing for, I think the less tension there is. I really believe so.
What about talking about Dora Geulah? I hear that a lot.
Big
Dora
time.
Geulah, I'm like, I don't know that.
100%. So you're saying, even saying Dora Geula would mean that that's a calculation.
It's just like you're gonna see it. You are gonna see it, which I hope is true. But
Right.
maybe it's not true.
But what?
Maybe it's not true.
Right. That's not your issue, but that's not your cheshbon. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That's not your emunah is your cheshbon. You know, emunah, belief, faith is your inyan. But to determine whether you're going to see it or not going to see it, that's not our cheshbonot. It's not our calculations to do. See, this whole notion of believing in the coming of Mashiach takes us out of the way we usually use our intellect and our logical mind. It removes it. Therefore, you have very unfortunate stench within a certain sect of Yiddishkeit, with the rational chavra, that they pull this out and they say, this whole thing of the Mashiach, this is not take it out completely. Why? Because it's not rational and it's not logical. But the Rambam made it as one of the 13 principles of faith. What am I supposed to do with that? The Rambam said, if you don't believe in the coming of the Mashiach, you're a kofar, you're a heretic. So we are trying to make sense of how to understand this to the best of our ability and to push our intellect to grasp higher concepts that we just haven't been privy to before. Okay, let's continue going. Let's keep on going on. Bottom paragraph over here. So the most simple understanding of this statement of Chazal about distraction or surprise basically means Lo neda matai tavo ageula. We will not know when the geula is going to happen. What does that demand of us? Letting go. Letting go of what, though? What are we letting go of? Believing in the coming of Mashiach? Chas v'shalom.
Our ego.
Our ego. What's that? Our calculation. What else? What do we have to let go of?
Control.
Expectations. Control. The way I think it's going to happen. What it's going to look like. Well,
Arrogance, we think we know, so it's being total humble.
it's total bit. It's like, yeah. It's states of bit bidiyuk. It's states of bitul like we could have never imagined. And all the above.
I keep on thinking about, like, people are talking about us being part of the Dora, this is the Dora of Mashiach, and I think that what it's saying is you have potential to be the Dora of Mashiach, which means you have to do every single thing that you need to do. So instead of taking a passive role and watching it happen, you take an active role and say, okay, we have potential to do it, and therefore we are going to do all the things that we can to bring Mashiach. And suddenly we're turning that into, like, expectations, from expectations to, first of all, hope and emunah, and also doing all things that Hashem wants us to do. So it's a win-win then, because even if, God forbid, we do not end up seeing Mashiach, which B'ezras Hashem we all will, we still have lived a meaningful life.
So I'm playing devil's advocate for a second. Does that mean that previous generations didn't have access to this?
I mean, I think it's definitely need to be part of a door that has so much talk about it. I have no idea what happened in the past.
No one spoke.
My grandfather said to me, when I tell him that Mashiach is coming, he said to me, we thought so also.
Right.
So obviously they did think so.
When he said that killed me. It was one of the hardest things to hear.
So I'm saying they did think that it was, and okay,
right,
it wasn't time yet. Going back to that idea, this is all part of the same time frame in Hashem's eyes. That doesn't take away the responsibility from us to believe that we are that door and that we have potential to bring it. And then we're not going to sit back and just watch it happen. Now we are going to take an active role in making it happen.
Win-win.
But is saying that
Win-win.
the door of Geula, like the type of calculation that, like, they thought at the Holocaust, and they think now.
Right.
The doctor, it's not going to happen. So we shouldn't talk about. I don't know.
Do you know? Me too. But do you know who brought?
Where the line is?
Do you know who brought about this like voice of this statement of, like, this is the door of Geula? The Rebbe. When? The first time he addressed the Tzibur, on his first Torah that he shared as a Rebbe. Yud Shvat 1951. We're going to learn it inside. Where he basically said, Kol Hashviin Chavivin, the seventh generation from the Baal Shem Tov. and he spoke about, like they showed, Rav Weinberger told me this once, they showed a manuscript of the Rebbe's first address. They brought it to the Brisker Rav, and the Brisker Rav said, this person thinks that he's Mashiach. Right away, that's what he said. And it's been, and if there's anyone that's done more to raise the awareness and consciousness, not just of the concept of Mashiach, but the active mitzvahs, it's the shluchim of the Rebbe, to conquer the world with Torah and mitzvahs. This sefer is all based on, more or less, what did the Rebbe really mean? How do we understand this Dor HaGeula, like Malka referenced before? So it's good. Like this is what we're gonna hopefully, I pray, not crack, but draw down in a manner that we live both with the notion of it's your cheshbon Hashem, and it could happen tomorrow, and it could happen tonight, but if it, God forbid, doesn't, it means nothing about my anticipation and belief in the coming of Mashiach, which to the logical mind does not add up and doesn't make sense. That does not add up. That doesn't make sense. Right? If I believe Hashem can do anything, I could be stuck in a place of saying, then why don't you do it right now? How many more widows? How many more orphans? How many more bereaved parents? Nachon, in my cheshbon, I have a calculation. And the calculation is yesterday. In my cheshbon. We are not operating, the brain, the usage of the intellect here has got to be, it's shifting to another place. The Rambam knew this. The Rambam knew. I'm going to put this as one of the principles of faith, because if it's not a key principle of faith, my rational mind will check me out of here a long time ago. Yeah. Just a little bit louder.
I think this is a good analogy, but like Simchas Torah, we have to live in the paradox. And this is the ultimate paradox.
Yeah.
Simchas Torah, you're supposed to bring, celebrate the Torah with joy. But it was the yard site of 1,200 people. So but we are obligated to have joy.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the same thing. Like we're obligated to, like Alana said, do the
Right.
actions of bringing, do the physical actions of bringing Mashiach.
Right.
But then at the same time, it's still a paradox.
Someone said a very deep thing about that over Yantiv. Maybe my brother-in-law, Yehuda, or maybe Steven said it at a certain session. But that, it's an amazing thing that if October 7th last year wasn't Simchas Torah, we would have an impossible relationship with October 7th. Impossible. But because it was Simchas Torah, therefore our generation has to figure out a way every year until Mashiach comes to understand that I have to be dancing with the Torah today. And that doesn't mean necessarily being besimcha. It means drawing out a depth within myself that never existed before.
And it's the same thing. Every time you wish for Mashiach and he doesn't come, I think it's an analogy to the same depth and the same paradox we live all the time.
Yeah, I hear that very much. I think that's very deep. I hear it. Mamash kacha.
It sounds like this whole waiting for Mashiach thing, kind of like the tzedakah, where tzedakah you give just to give and not to get back. So same thing here. We're just doing everything that we have to do to work Hashem and not expect that Mashiach's coming back, because we're doing it just to do it. And if we get something, that's fantastic. But if not, then that's what has to happen. And just tzedakah. You're giving tzedakah not so you can get,
Right.
during Rosh Hashanah, right? So
Right.
you give tzedakah just so that Or Chatayim get erased.
Right.
No, you're giving tzedakah just to give tzedakah.
Right, it's true. There are those that's it looks like this, they give tzedakah, knowing that you should be and just have to give tzedakah, right? But they're they kind of go like this, but they don't really do this. But this is what's happening. They go like this. Nachon. So it's almost like, right, it's very good. So it's almost like with Mashiach, Ani Mamin B'Emunah Shlema B'Yas Mashiach. Right. That's exactly what you did said was so accurate. That's not the parsha here. That's not the way this thing works. It's not the way this thing works. I mean, Emunah is the same exact thing. Same exact thing. But this inyan of Mashiach coming. I mean, one time I walked into the office of our dear friend Rav Shlomo Katz, Zichrono Livracha. I remember one day in Elul, in Tishrei, and he looked really bothered, more than usual. And he said to me, Rav Shlomo, you know, a lot of people that are really done with waiting. And it's really heavy on me. A lot of people that are really done with this waiting business. And then he said, and that's also real, but yalla, you know, but weiter. We keep on going. Our waiting is not calculated. And that's a very, very important yesod in learning about living a life of davening for Mashiach to come. Now, don't ever say these words at a shiva house, right? I have a klal at a shiva home of bereaved parents or siblings or children. I've never not said to them the following. I've always said, I want you to know that I know that for you, the only nechama is bias Mashiach. Yes, you should be consoled, you should find comfort, but the real consolation, the rest of your life, the full one, can only be the coming of Mashiach. So I'm taking it upon myself to do whatever I personally can to up my game so that you could actually be consoled. Again, it doesn't mean I'm making predictions. It just means that like what you're saying, Ilana, it just means like my life, my meaning of my life is going to be upped. And we all are there. We're all doing it. We're all doing it. We all are. Look at you. Look at this last year. It's nuts. We're all in this together. We've all upped our game more than we ever thought we could. We've all upped our game, and we're going to continue to up it more and more and more. Okay, so again, ve'achen hakavana. We're going to finish with this last paragraph. Ve'achen hakavana pshuta b'mamar zehi. So the simple meaning in this ma'amar is, shelo neda matai tavo ha'geula. We won't know when the geula is going to come. Keshem she'i, just like keshem she'i efshar ladat merosh matai timatzem mitziyah. Just like you don't know ahead of time when are you going to stumble upon something that you lost. V'matai ya'akotz akrav, and when a scorpion is going to bite. Kach gam ha'geula tavo be'hafta'a. Redemption is also going to come as a surprise. אנחנו צריכים להתפלל על הגאולה, לייחל לבואה ולחשוב עליה כל היום. We have to daven for it and think about it all day, every day. לישועתך קיווינו כל יום, אבל לא נדע מתי בפועל יבוא המשיח, כי הדבר יקרה במפתיע. Because it will happen in surprise. So it's chaval that we have to end here, but I'm dafka not continuing here because that we're going to end this piece next week to really grasp it we have to give it its full attention. But the important thing so far for now is that just because you don't know exactly when something is going to happen does not mean that it's not going to happen.
It's mimicked it.
Going back to Reb Levi Yitzchak Berditchever's Chus Yagen Aleinu today, his Yortzeitz today, he says exactly that. We say on Tisha B'Av, Eli Tzion ve'areha, kmo isha betzireha. We're never sure when and how it's going to happen, but we believe that it will happen. And the only reason why a woman is able to, from the first woman in the world that ever gave birth, the only reason, I know I always feel weird saying these things as a man, but the only reason a woman is able to take the pain of labor is why? Because she has das. She knows bidiyuk. That's what the tzaddik Reb Levi, that's what you said, and this is what Reb Levi Yitzchak also said. It's bidiyuk. It's the same thing, and that's why they call it Chevlei Mashiach. Chevlei Mashiach hinei zebach. Chevlei Mashiach, the birth pangs, labor pangs. Nachon, these are pretty intense Braxton Hicks that have been going on for,
But with labor,
you know.
we have a date plugged into that.
They do 6,000 years.
Like it could happen any time, of course. But okay, by this date or by 2 weeks after this date, you're gonna have this baby.
The difference is that this is Hashem's baby. But this is Hashem's baby. Right.
But the whole point of what we just talked about is that it's like completely hafuch, that there is no due date. There is like
No. There is a due date, you just don't know it. There is a due date. You just don't know it.
Right, but here you do know it.
Nachon.
So it's very different.
The simulation.
You see the finish line.
Nachon.
The Havas that really struck a chord. It's we believe, we don't know. This we know. We know, we've seen, it's proven. We believe, we hope. We don't know 100% for sure. It hasn't happened yet.
Right.
That's a wait for a
But you know what? But Daniela, I just want to say like this. This is very important. The way that we make shalom with the distance between I don't know, I believe, is that we get active. We get active in the game. We don't sit back and sit.
What does that mean?
40 weeks. Like that's not an. Our Indian is getting What does active mean?
It's just
I mean,
like
Torah
Tuesday,
study,
the last month,
Tshuva,
getting the house ready.
Tithing, all the teams.
Everything.
Being fully in. Well, to tell you what, you're sitting here. You're in whether you realize it or not. You live in Eretz Yisrael today. You left Florida. You're here. You're in. Whether you like it or not, you're in. We're all in it anyway. We are already all in. Now the shaila is just how much more we really get involved to the best of our ability in a healthy way. So, and I'll avoid that being more active towards bringing the Mashiach, Be'emet, it doesn't weaken it when you see it didn't happen yet. It actually strengthens it. It actually strengthens our faith and our belief. But not from the bench, from the court. That's the only way. From the court. Okay, we'll continue this B'ezrat Hashem next week. One more announcement. On Thursdays, we're starting a new shir. It's very important. I'm sorry I didn't say this before. On Thursdays, we were doing Rav Steinsaltz Amim Naraim. From this Thursday morning, there's a bris in the shul. There won't be a shir this Thursday morning. Be'ito bizmano, please God, it'll happen. If it doesn't, I'll change. But we're going back to inside Rabbi Nachman Breslov's teachings from this Thursday morning, Bezrat. From this or next Thursday morning, Bezrat Hashem.
Thank you so much.